Hi everyone. Tonight we're traveling to a place where heat doesn't just exist. It judges you. Where the air feels charged with divine scrutiny, and the sun itself has personal plans for your suffering. It's an ordinary morning in ancient Egypt. You're still lying there, or rather spread out on a straw mat that already feels like an oven. There are no soft sheets, no feather pillows, no coffee waiting. Just you, a paper-thin linen wrap, and the unmistakable sensation that you're being slowly roasted alive, gently, like a sacred chicken offered to Ra. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I love seeing that night map fill in. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's begin tonight's journey together. You wake up and immediately feel the sky's eyes on you, not metaphorically. The sun has already entered your home before you've even left it, like an intrusive guest who helps himself. Your house is made of mud bricks, your roof is straw, and the idea of glass windows doesn't exist. Just wide, openings where anything can come in, light, dust, and a daily dose of despair. It's barely 7 a.m., and your body is already covered in sweat before you even think of getting up. And yes, that happens every day. Your bed is a rough mat over a dirt floor. Your pillow is nothing, or maybe a carved block of wood, if you're lucky. You stand up and the linen covering your body, if it covers anything, is already stuck in places you'd rather not talk about. That famous Nile morning breeze? A myth. It probably died with the last king of the Third Dynasty. You try placing your feet on the ground, but the bricks are already hot. Not warm, hot. You didn't walk into the sun came to you. The thermometer, if it existed, would be begging for mercy. And this is just the start of your day. You step into the courtyard, eyes squinting, and the sunlight slaps you in the face. Literally. Egyptian gods were never subtle with metaphors. Your outfit, that piece of linen, is transparent, enough for even the insects to judge your choices. It offers the same protection level as a wet napkin in a pizza oven. And of course, there is no sunscreen. The best you can do is smear on some mud, or if you're truly desperate, crocodile dung. Yes, really. An ancient remedy that historians still debate. Was it religious, medicinal, or just a creative cry for help? By now, you're already regretting being born in this century. Your eyes sting, your skin burns, and your mood is melting faster than any wax the temple candles could offer. You think about finding some shade, but that idea hits a technical problem. There are no trees. Trees are a luxury. What you have are short mud brick walls. And if you press yourself tightly against one, you might catch 5 minutes of partial shade before feeling like a forgotten vegetable roasting in the corner of a tray. And don't even think about complaining. Complaining is blasphemy, remember? The sun isn't just weather, it's divine. Ra is watching, and if you're melting, that means he's in a good mood. What an honor. Your neighbor walks by carrying a clay water jug on his head and gives you a brief nod. He's drenched. Not because he bathed, just because he exists. Sweat here isn't a response. It's a state of being. He doesn't look miserable, just resigned. Like a chicken who has accepted it will be marinated. You think about what lies ahead. A walk to the Nile to get water, maybe a quick wash, a rub down with sand, that stone-like bread for breakfast. All of it under a sun that doesn't just shine, it interrogates. And that's only the beginning of your day. Speaking of which, your mouth is already dry, like you spent the night chewing cotton. And the heat hasn't even peaked yet. Because in ancient Egypt, the sun doesn't rise and it imposes itself, slowly, like a lid closing over the world. By mid-morning, the stones underfoot are already hot enough to fry lentils if someone dared to drop a few. The air ripples, literally. You can see mirages dancing like you're in some kind of fever dream. Except, it's not a dream. Just heat, unapologetic and overwhelming. You consider heading to the nearest temple. Maybe the towering columns offer some relief. But you're not a priest, or noble, or scribe, which means the only place for you is outside, with the others, with the mortals being slow roasted with divine approval. By now your back is beginning to protest, a subtle burn, then a stubborn sting. You glance down, and there it is, the day's first signature, a patch of uneven tanning that tomorrow will be either a blister or a spiritual tattoo. If you had a piece of papyrus and ink, you'd write, a psalm begging for shade. But what you really have is thirst. And since the heat isn't going away, you might as well walk to the river, which is a bad idea, but you don't know that yet. Not quite. You stumble back into your house and reach for a clay jug of water. It's hot. The water is hot. The air is hot. And you're starting to suspect that ancient Egypt wasn't just a civilization. It was a divine test. And you're failing it. Oh, and remember that crocodile dung? You'll see it again. But not now. Right now, heat is the protagonist, and it's not stepping off stage anytime soon. Like a director insisting you feel the scene. Literally. This heat isn't just physical. It's emotional. It penetrates your thoughts. It invades your will. It makes you imagine that maybe the gods really are watching, judging how many times you think about diving into the Nile today. Spoiler, you'll think about it 3 more times before lunch. Historians still debate whether this level of constant exposure to heat had any evolutionary effect on the Egyptians. Some believe it helped forge a highly adaptable culture. Others say it just explains why so many of them always looked ready for the afterlife. Meanwhile, you're just trying not to melt, and the day has barely begun. You're already halfway roasted. You finally decide it's time to head for the Nile. Not out of courage, but necessity. The heat has drained the moisture from your body like a sponge wrung out by a vengeful god, and your only hope of surviving this day is to find water, even if it means sharing it with things that hiss, bite, or worship the idea of biting. The journey to the river isn't epic, but it feels like one. Just a few minutes of walking under the sun makes your bones feel boiled. The clay road beneath, your feet is cracked and hot, and there's no such thing as shoes unless you're a priest, merchant, or reincarnated deity. You shuffle forward, toes curling instinctively with every sizzling step, praying that today is not the day you meet a scorpion with ambition. As the Nile comes into view, your first impression is not mystical or majestic. It's olfactory. The smell hits you first. It's part fish market, part swamp, and part something else. You try not to inhale too deeply, but curiosity betrays you. It smells like life and decay are having an argument in the sun. Still, it's water. Sort of. The banks are buzzing. Not with people, though there are plenty, but with flies. Flies on frogs, flies on fish, flies on people. They swarm with the energy of creatures that know they will outlive you. You approach the riverbank, navigating around muddy patches, livestock and a toddler smearing something unidentifiable on a sibling. This is your bath. No soap. No privacy. Just sand, heat, and a public chorus of complaints in various tones. You take a deep breath in which you immediately regret, and step into the water. It's warm, but not soothing. It's the kind of warm that feels like someone else's bath you accidentally walked into. You crouch down and begin the ritual of sand scrubbing. Yes, sand. Exfoliation, the Egyptian way. Coarse, gritty, and oddly satisfying if you pretend you're polishing a statue instead of your own skin. Sand gets in your hair, between your fingers, behind your knees, and somehow inside your ears, even if your head's above water. Historians still debate whether this was seen as a health practice or just what happened when your only cleaning supply was the earth itself. You rub harder, as if effort alone will purify you. Meanwhile, a crocodile yawns on the opposite bank. You lock eyes. He does not blink. You do. You both know whose river this really is. Beside you, a woman is washing clothes by pounding them against rocks. It's aggressive laundry. She swings a tunic like it insulted her ancestors, and she's not alone. A dozen others are doing the same, their rhythmic slapping creating a strange symphony of wet survival. Laundry, by the way, is risky business. This stretch of river is shared with the city's full ecosystem, including funeral boats, latrine runoff, and the occasional animal carcass. You see something float past. You decide not to look again. There is peace in selective ignorance. You fill your jar with water. Careful not to stir the mud too much. It won't matter. It'll settle anyway, into your pot, your cup, and eventually, your digestive system. Boiling water is a good idea in theory, but that requires firewood, time, and a will to live stronger than thirst. You'll drink it anyway. Everyone does, even if the Nile is basically nature's petri dish. Back at the riverbank, people chat, argue, sing, and occasionally splash each other like they've forgotten the water is home to parasites and reptiles with prehistoric grudges. Children swim with the ease of creatures born into chaos. You envy them. You also keep an eye on the waterline, just in case anything long and scaly decides to join. Once you're done bathing, and by bathing, we mean rubbing until your skin feels slightly less sticky, you wade back out. Your linen tunic clings to your body like a damp accusation. You consider removing it to dry faster, but there are rules, gods, and neighbors to consider. Your skin now smells faintly of river and desperation, but at least you're no longer coated in last night's sweat. You take small wins where you can. Now comes the water-carrying part. Your jar is full. Your arms are not. You balance it on your head as you've seen others do and immediately regret all your past choices. It wobbles like a newborn giraffe. You try again. This time it stays, but you walk with the grace of someone tight-roping across fire. Each step is calculated, hesitant as if the sun has turned your spine into string. The path back home is uphill. Of course it is. Each footstep squishes the mud between your toes, reminding you that the Nile never really leaves you. You're halfway. Up when the jar tilts, you lunge to correct it, you succeed. But your back reminds you it has opinions. You finally reach your house, drop the jar inside, and breathe, shallowly. The air inside is barely better. At least the water will last a few hours. Maybe. The good news? You're clean, hydrated, and technically still alive. The bad news? It's almost time for breakfast, and no, you won't be frying eggs or picking fruit. You'll be eating something that should probably come with a dental warning. Still dripping, still half-cooked, you take a seat, or crouch in the corner, because chairs are a status symbol, and wait for the meal that will remind you why. No one remembers ancient Egypt for its cuisine, but more on that in a moment. For now, take pride in the fact that you bathed in a river full of gods, ghosts, fish, and possibly human toes. You did it without soap, privacy, or the ability to forget it later, and you didn't get eaten yet. You're still slightly damp, slightly dizzy, and fully aware that your stomach has been complaining for at least half an hour. It's time for breakfast, although calling it that might be overselling it. You're not walking into a cafe. There's no fig compote, no mint tea with honey, no flaky pastry from a Nile-side bakery. This is not a meal. This is survival disguised as tradition. You crouch on the floor next to your family or housemates, or maybe both, since space is fluid and privacy is fantasy. There's a low table if you're rich, a basket if you're lucky, or just the ground if you're honest. You pull a rough cloth over your legs and prepare yourself for the least glamorous part of the day. Bread, but not just any bread. This is emmer wheat or barley bread, ground by hand between stone slabs, which, as you're painfully aware, means that each bite contains just enough sand to count as both food and exfoliant. You take a piece. It's dense, heavy. It looks like it could double as a building material in case a wall falls over. You sink your teeth in and hear the sound of your molars protesting. There's a crunch, and it's not a crust. It's stone residue. Every Egyptian smiles with flat teeth, not because it's fashionable, but because their enamel has been worn down like river stones by decades of eating their own millstones. And it gets better. The drink of choice? Beer. But not the fizzy, crisp kind with foam and a label. This is thick, cloudy, and served at the exact temperature of your armpit. It's barely fermented, just enough to kill the bacteria and keep the parasites guessing. It tastes like someone left oatmeal in a bucket for 3 days and then dared you to drink it. You sip, slowly. You try not to gag because, honestly, this is the safest thing you'll consume today. Children drink it too. Not because it's cool, not because they're edgy proto-hipsters, but because beer is actually safer than Nile water. At least boiling happened. Kind of. You look across the room and see a toddler holding a clay cup of this ancient smoothie, slurping with enthusiasm. You try not to be bitter about it. If you're lucky, and we're talking struck by lightning lucky, you might get an onion or a few dried dates with your meal. Something sweet, something sharp, something with a texture other than sandpaper. Meat sponge. But not today. Today it's just you, your gritty brick of bread, and your sour cereal soup. A fly lands on your bread. You wave it away. It returns. You try again. It brings a friend. Eventually, you give up and just share. That's how it works. This isn't your breakfast, it's the breakfast of the ecosystem. You take a bite, swat, sip, and repeat. Over and over. The fly wins. Always. You look at your hands. There's dirt under your nails, even after the bath. Your tunic smells like Nile and regret. And yet, this moment, this grinding, buzzing, sand-filled moment, is what passes for calm. The world is quiet, in that dusty, distant way. The kind of quiet that sits on your shoulders, reminding you that noise will come soon. But for now, you chew. You chew like you're on a mission, because honestly, this bread takes effort. Not just digestion, mental commitment. Every bite is a negotiation between survival and dental tragedy. You remember stories told by the elders about the good years, when the grain was cleaner, the beer smoother, and the sand less and crunchy. You don't believe them. You think they're nostalgic liars with selective memory and no teeth. Still, there's comfort in ritual. You've eaten the same breakfast every day for years. It hasn't improved, but at least it's predictable. In a world where gods turn into animals and rulers pretend to be gods, there's something oddly grounding about terrible bread. You glance around the room. Others are in the same boat, chewing, blinking, accepting. A grandmother wipes a child's face with a cloth that might have been clean last season. A young man stares into his bowl of beer like it holds the meaning of life. Or maybe he's just trying not to vomit. Someone coughs, someone else sneezes. No one reacts. Life continues. Your thoughts wander. You wonder if the pharaoh eats this same bread. Probably not. He probably gets flour that's been sifted through the hair of virgins and baked in ovens that haven't seen a rat since construction. His beer is probably flavored with honey and served in gold cups, surrounded by servants who wave away the flies before they even think of landing. But that's a guess. Back in your world, you're finishing the last bite of your chewy brick. It sticks in your teeth. It laughs at your attempt to swallow. You chase it with a gulp of warm, viscous beer, and for a moment, everything tastes like the inside of a storage jar. You stand, slowly. Your knees crack like old papyrus. Your back resists. Your stomach protests. But the meal is done. You've absorbed just enough calories to function. Not thrive, not shine, just function. That's the goal. Outside, the sun hasn't moved. Or maybe it has, but it's hard to tell. It's still oppressive, still personal, still trying to convince you that today is a good day to burst into flames. And now, it's time to work. You glance at your tools, a dull blade, a wooden plow, your own hands. Your heart sinks, but your feet move. You're not late. You're just exactly on time to suffer. But before you go, you check your water jar. It's still there, still fullish. That's good. You tie a piece of linen over your head, not for style, but to delay the moment when your scalp starts sizzling like oil on stone. As you step outside, the heat greets you like an old enemy who's just remembered why it hates you. Your breath is shallow. Your vision is a little fuzzy. But you press forward. You always do. Because bread waits for no one. Especially not the sacred chicken. You've eaten. You've bathed. Sort of. You've sweated through every layer of linen you own, which is exactly one. And now, as the sun climbs higher with theatrical menace, it's time to work. Not check your calendar and take a Zoom. Call kind of work. Not even your boss added 5 more tasks to your to-do list kind of work. No. This is ancient Egyptian labor. It doesn't negotiate, it doesn't pivot, it just exists. like gravity, like hunger, like sand. You step into the light, and it welcomes you with the subtlety of an open oven. The air itself feels thicker now, like you're walking through heat that's been beaten into soup. You squint. You breathe shallow. You adjust your tunic, though it makes no difference. You're not dressed. You're draped. There's no armor between you and the sun. If you're a farmer, and statistically you are, your day begins knee-deep in Nile mud. Not the refreshing kind. The sticky, ankle-sucking kind that makes every step feel like you're fighting. A sleepy monster made of clay. Your job? Plant barley, pull weeds, irrigate, shovel, repeat. You don't have boots. You don't have gloves. You have a wooden plow and a memory of what your hands used to feel like. Calluses form on top of old calluses. Your fingers don't bend like they used to. Your back reminds you that bending is a young person's game. And your neck? It no longer turns left without making a decision about it. Over you stands the overseer. He has a stick. He also has opinions. Most of them shouted, loudly, repetitively. He doesn't seem to do much, but he watches with the intensity of someone whose only purpose in life is to spot laziness or invent it. You try to stay invisible. The field is vast. Endless, really. The Nile floods have receded, and now it's your job to coax food from the earth before the sun bakes it into pottery. The soil is rich, but temperamental. You dig with a tool shaped like a question mark and wonder if that's deliberate. At some point, a coworker nearby mutters something under his breath. The overseer hears it. He walks over. There's a pause, a moment, then yelling. Maybe worse. You look away. That's how it works. You survive by looking away, because in ancient Egypt, complaints rise as prayers and fall as punishments. Historians still debate whether the harshness of labor was spiritual discipline, economic necessity, or just the world being casually brutal before coffee was invented. You bend again. Your tunic slips. You wipe sweat with your forearm and press forward. The sun is directly above now, so every shadow has disappeared, just like your enthusiasm. If you're not a farmer, maybe you're a laborer, which is somehow worse. That means construction, stone hauling, temple building, tomb carving. You're handed a rope, a hammer, or a chisel, and told to make something sacred out of pain. Picture this. Multi-ton stones dragged up sand ramps by teams of barefoot men under the gaze of priests who remind you this is for the gods. No cranes, no pulleys, just friction, sweat, and the faint hope that your shoulder doesn't separate from your body today. You pass the ramps. You hear the groans. You see a man stumble. He's helped up, or not. Depends on the mood. Depends on the supervisor. Depends on whether the gods feel generous today. At the tombs, it's a different kind of suffering. Underground, dark, humid. You carve with patience. You etch prayers and images into limestone walls, knowing the person who will rest here will be surrounded by eternal beauty, and you'll rest in whatever patch of dirt your family can dig. Mistakes are not welcome. If you chip Ra's nose, you might end up joining the tomb before your time. Job security here is complicated. Still, the work must be done. The gods need homes, the pharaohs need resting places. The economy of death is booming, and you, lucky soul, are part of the supply chain. If you're a woman, your workday isn't easier, it's just different. After breakfast, you grind grain. Again. Not metaphorically. Literally. With a flat stone and a circular motion that slowly erodes both wheat and your wrists. You carry water. You stir pots over open fires. You sweep. You sew. You comfort children. You tend gardens. You carry animals, feed them, clean after them. And then, just to spice things up, you help in the fields when needed. Your break? When the baby naps for 7 minutes. If your child cries, you bounce them with one arm while stirring porridge with the other and using your foot to nudge the family dog away from the grain pile. You are multitasking long before the term existed. There is no sick leave, no maternity policy, no rest. Just the rhythm of sun and season. And at every turn, someone older reminds you how lucky you are to be alive. You smile politely and dream of reincarnating as someone with shade. The heat intensifies. You feel it behind your eyes, inside your bones. Your sweat dries before it finishes forming. You take a sip of water. It's warm. It tastes like clay. You accept it. Someone nearby starts a song, a work chant, rhythmic, hypnotic. You join in, not because you feel joyful, but because the rhythm gives your arms a reason to keep moving. It gives your heart something to beat alongside. The chant isn't happy, but it is human. Lunchtime comes, but not really. There's a pause. Maybe you sit. Maybe you crouch in shade that barely qualifies as shadow. You eat leftover bread. If you remembered to bring some, you drink more beer. If it didn't spill on the way. Someone laughs at a joke that isn't funny. You join in because laughter is cheaper than rebellion. Your body aches. Your hands shake. But the day isn't over. Back to the fields. Back to the stones. Back to the grind. You count the hours by the angle of the sun and the speed of your dehydration. No clocks, just pain and instinct. By late afternoon, your legs no longer belong to you. They move, but only because stopping means lying down. And lying down means not getting up. You think about quitting, whatever that would mean. You imagine walking away, into the desert, into myth. But you don't, because there's still bread to earn, still flies to feed, still gods to impress. The sun begins to dip. The light softens. The temperature drops from inferno to furnace. You feel relief like a kiss from a kind ghost. You start walking home. Your muscles protest, your joints creak, your feet burn. But you move. Because you always move. You arrive. You sit. You don't speak for a while. Someone offers you a cup. You drink. You exhale. The day has ended. But the heat hasn't left, and tomorrow you'll do it all again. Because in ancient Egypt, rest is just a pause between punishments. You've returned home. You've survived another day. Technically. You've planted, carved, hauled, scrubbed, and sweated through more layers of linen than your tunic even has. Now the sun dips low, casting gold across the desert, like a false promise of peace. And yet, something still itches. Sand. You feel it everywhere. Not metaphorically, literally. You thought you left it at the riverbank, or maybe the fields. But no. Sand is patient. Sand is persistent. Sand is eternal. It follows you like a low-level curse. There's sand in your shoes, if you're lucky enough to wear any. There's sand between your toes, behind your knees, in the creases of your elbows. You find it in your scalp, even though your hair is tied. You find it in your ears, in your food, in your bed, in your soul. Ancient Egypt isn't a place. It's a sandbox with delusions of grandeur. You try to brush it off. You do. You slap your arms. You dust your tunic. But it's like trying to shake guilt. The more you fight it, the more it clings. Every time you think you've won, a single grain reappears, smug and defiant, stuck in a new place. You don't even want to talk about the personal places. And it's not clean, pretty postcard sand. This is sharp, gritty, personality-filled sand. It wants you to know it's there. It's the kind of sand that leaves scratches on your pots, your skin, and your optimism. Historians still debate whether the Egyptians embraced the sand as symbolic or simply accepted that nature was petty and relentless. You try to rinse your hands. The water helps briefly, then it evaporates. The sand remains. It always remains. Someone passes you a jar. You drink. Clay on your lips, warmth in your throat, and sand. Somehow, it's made its way inside the beer. Again. You sip anyway. What's the point of resistance now? You sit on the threshold of your home. The sun bleeds into the horizon. The light softens, but the air still holds heat like an argument you can't win. Around you, people begin to rest. Children chase each other. Someone sings. The quiet hour begins. And then someone sneezes. Because yes, there's sand in the air too. It doesn't just sit. It flies. It invades your nose with the grace of a dancer and the impact of a slap. You blow your nose. It comes out beige. You don't question it anymore. Even in your home, sand follows. Your bedding, laced with it. Your cooking pots, etched by it. Your lungs, a bit crunchy, if you're honest. You once tried to sweep it out, but sweeping sand in Egypt is like sweeping rain in a flood. Futile, philosophical, a gesture of polite denial. You remember that story about Set, the god of chaos, how he lived in the desert and embodied disorder. You wonder if maybe Set isn't just a myth. Maybe he's the sand itself, whispering reminders of cosmic discomfort every time you try to sit down. You shift your tunic again. More sand. Of course. You lie down. Carefully. You shake out your mat. You pat the corners. You whisper a quiet prayer. And then, as you stretch, there it is. The sharp kiss of a tiny forgotten grain. Right on your spine. Like a signature from the gods. You sigh. Loudly. Your neighbor tells you, the sand is good. It keeps away the moisture. You nod. You don't agree. But what would be the point? Because here's the truth. In ancient Egypt, sand isn't the enemy. It's the environment. It shapes your homes, your tools, your tombs. It buries the dead and preserves their memories. It swirls in the wind like ancestral gossip. You don't fight the sand. You coexist with it. Uneasily. Resignedly. Still. Some days you dream of grass. Of soft wet grass between your toes. Of rain. Of clouds. Of mud without grit. You've never seen these things, not really. But you believe in them. Like myths. Like paradise. Like sleep that doesn't end with coughing up a dry cough and a fleck of limestone. Dinner time approaches. A pot is uncovered. The aroma fills the space, earthy, spiced, overcooked. You eat with your fingers. You chew slowly. The stew is good. Then again, anything tastes good when it doesn't bite back. But yes, there's sand in that too. Crunch with every bite, like seasoning. You pretend it's texture. You pretend it's intentional. Someone says, this reminds me of the feast after the last inundation. You nod. You don't correct them. You're too tired, too grainy. The sun finally disappears. Night falls like a long exhale. Stars begin to bloom across the black sky. You look up. You wonder if the stars get sand in their orbits too. Bedtime again. You dust your mat. Again. You lie down. Again. You try not to shift too much. You try not to think too much. You try not to feel the tickle of another grain on your neck. But you do. It's always there. The sand isn't cruel. Just consistent. Unapologetic. Eternal. In ancient Egypt, the desert doesn't just surround the cities. It lives inside the people. One grain at a time. The stars are out now, but don't get too comfortable. In ancient Egypt, rest is never really free. You've endured the sand, the heat, the bread, and the labor. But tonight, you remember something far more unsettling than scorpions or flies. You live under a god, not just a king, not a ruler, a literal, walking, talking god. The Pharaoh. You roll over on your mat, trying to find a spot that doesn't poke, scratch, or whisper the judgment of 1,000 years of tradition. Your neighbor snores. A dog whines in the distance. Somewhere, a pot breaks. And in your mind, one image holds steady. The golden crown, the curved beard, the long shadow of power that stretches from the palace all the way to your mud brick doorstep. Because here, power doesn't visit you in disguise. It wears eyeliner. It rides in a gilded boat. It erects monuments that can be seen from miles away. The Pharaoh is not just your king. He is your divine ceiling. And you're expected to live like that ceiling is watching. Always. You've never met him. Of course not. But you've seen his statues. His name is everywhere and on temple walls, on obelisks, carved into tombs and scrawled in the margins of your thoughts. You know how to say it reverently, how to spell it, if you're lucky enough to be literate, and how to never ever use it in vain. The pharaoh is Horus in the flesh. When he dies, he becomes Osiris, and his son becomes the next Horus. It's a divine job with excellent benefits, mostly immortality and a personalized pyramid. For you? Well, your benefit is that you get to live in the reflected light of that glory, or burn in its radiance depending on the season. You close your eyes and imagine the palace. Gold, cool marble, lotus pools, cats that don't have fleas, servants who bathe in imported oils, priests chanting, dancers moving like smoke. Meanwhile, you're wrapped in a linen blanket that smells like onions in dreams. Still, you are taught, constantly, that this is good, that divine order is everything. The pharaoh is the linchpin of Ma'at, that sacred balance between chaos and order. Without him, the Nile wouldn't flood, the stars wouldn't rise, bread wouldn't bake, children wouldn't cry in the key of C minor. The temple priests tell you this often. They speak of Ra traveling across the sky each day in his solar bark, fighting the serpent Apophis at night to ensure the sun returns. If the pharaoh weren't here to uphold Ma'at, Apophis might win. No sun, no crops, no taxes. Wait, maybe that last one wouldn't be so bad. But no, don't think like that. Even your thoughts are subject to cosmic judgment. You look at the temple nearby. You've never been inside. Not really. The outer courts, sure. But the holiest of holies? Off limits. That's for priests. And they're not regular people. They're shaved, perfumed, trained in ritual. They handle the gods like accountants handle sacred spreadsheets. You remember seeing a festival once, a procession. The statue of Amun being carried through the streets in a gilded shrine, veiled in linens with music, incense, and dancers swirling like flames. People wept. Not because of the heat, though it didn't help, but because they felt close to something huge, something ancient, something terrifyingly beautiful. You didn't cry, but you felt something, like your bones remembered a time when the gods walked louder. Still, it's complicated. You've heard whispers that the priests hold more power than the pharaoh himself, that temples own more land than families, that grain disappears in the name of divine offerings and reappears as wealth in priestly storehouses. But you don't say these things out loud. You don't even fully think them. The gods are everywhere, after all, watching, listening, correcting. Historians still debate whether religion was sincerely believed or politically enforced. You think the truth is less romantic. Belief was survival. Even if you doubted, what else could you do? Start a revolution against Ra? Good luck with that. You turn on your side. A cockroach scuttles across the wall. You try to ignore it. Maybe it's a sign from the afterlife. Maybe it's just Tuesday. Tomorrow is a holy day. A minor one. A celebration of a lesser deity. Perhaps Hapi, the god of the Nile's flood. Or Bastet, the cat goddess who protects homes and scratches intruders. Either way, it means more incense, more bread for the priests, possibly a parade, and if you're lucky, a slightly longer rest period. You'll line the streets, you'll clap, you'll throw flowers, you'll pretend you're thrilled because, in ancient Egypt, performance is devotion. You wonder in the quietest corner of your mind if the gods ever get tired of being worshipped, of the songs, the chants, the sacrifices. You imagine Ra leaning on his sunboat railing, bored to tears, watching humanity sweat and bow and sacrifice goats for better harvests. Does he ever want a day off? You'd offer to take his place, but you're already hot enough. Still, it fascinates you. The structure, the ritual, the cosmic bureaucracy. You imagine the afterlife as a giant office full of divine paperwork. A place where your soul is weighed, your sins cataloged, your virtues stamped by minor deities in linen kilts with quill pens. You're not sure if you believe in all of it, but you still leave food out for your ancestors. You still wear your protective amulet, chipped as it is. You still whisper prayers during sandstorms, because what if it's all true? And if it isn't? Well, The rituals give meaning to the chaos. They tie the days together. They make life, death, and everything in between feel intentional, even. The heat has a purpose. It's Ra's light, his gaze, his proof of existence. Even the pharaoh who lives behind walls and rarely speaks feels more real when you see the sun rise. Because if nothing else, someone must be paying attention to make all of this continue. You finally begin to drift. The city is quieter now. The stars blink lazily above. You imagine what tomorrow will bring. Sweat, sand, bread, beer, and a healthy dose of divine micromanagement. But maybe also a breeze, or a joke shared in the field, or a dream where you're the pharaoh for 5 minutes and the cats finally respect you. You exhale. The gods can watch. You're too tired to care. You wake up to a pain in your foot. Not the philosophical kind, the literal kind. It pulses in time with your heartbeat, like a drummer's soft warning from beneath the skin. You blink, stretch, wiggle your toes, regret it immediately. Something is wrong. And this is a problem because in ancient Egypt, being injured isn't just unfortunate, and it's complicated. You sit up slowly, dust still clinging to your skin from the night before. You look at your foot. It's swollen, reddish, angry looking. You poke it. It pokes back, emotionally. You try to stand. You fail. You try again, putting your weight on the good foot. The bad one rebels like a noble in a forgotten province. You sit back down and stare at it as if glaring might convince it to heal. You whisper a curse, not the magical kind, the frustrated kind, and think through your options. You're not a priest. You're not rich. You're not anyone whose pain will be fast-tracked to healing. But you are someone who can find someone who might know someone who maybe once apprenticed with someone who used to know a healer. So you limp. You limp through the street, like a tragic reenactment of something mythic. The ground is uneven. The sun is judgmental, and your neighbors are already too busy pretending not to notice your hobble. Eventually, you reach her. The healer. She lives in a modest home, but her doorway is marked, not officially, not with signs, but with smell. Dried herbs, ground resin, the faint sting of garlic, maybe dung. It's a pharmacy by ancient standards. It's a risk assessment by modern ones. She sees you approach. She doesn't smile. She doesn't need to. You sit. She grunts. You point to your foot. She doesn't ask what happened. She knows it doesn't matter. A scorpion sting, a stone bruise, a divine punishment. It's all treated the same way, with ritual, root, and resignation. She begins by spitting on her hands. You try not to flinch. She mashes garlic with beer and honey. She adds something you don't recognize. Possibly fig, possibly dirt. Then she wraps your foot in linen soaked in this mash, all while chanting words you don't understand. They might be medical. They might be magical. They might be both. Because, here's the truth, in ancient Egypt, healing is never just physical. It's spiritual, emotional, cosmic. Your body is not just flesh. It's a battlefield between balance and chaos, between Ma'at and the unknown forces that lurk in the desert winds. So if you're sick, the treatment is a blend, poultices, spells, and appeals to gods who may or may not be on speaking terms with you. The healer lights incense. She waves it over your head. She mutters the name of Sekhmet, lioness goddess of healing and plague. You're not sure which part applies today. She anoints your forehead with oil and sticks a piece of papyrus to your chest. It's written, with a protective verse. You don't read it. You just hope it works. Historians still debate whether these rituals were symbolic, psychological, or medicinal in their own right. You think it doesn't matter. Because when your foot feels like it's being chewed from the inside, you don't question the power of mashed garlic and goddess breath. After she's done, she gives you something to chew. Bitter, chalky, strange. You ask what it is. She shrugs. For the evil inside, she says. You nod. Sure, you pay her. In bread, in thanks, in whatever your aching body can offer. and you limp home with a foot wrapped like a mummy and a stomach full of what might be tree bark. Back in your home you rest. You watch the linen wrap soak through with ooze and prayer. You count your breaths. You chew more of the bitter root. You wait. And in the silence you remember how many times this has happened before. To others, to you. Infections, fevers, bruises that don't fade, coughs that don't leave. Each one a gamble. You remember a cousin who drank bad water, a friend who stepped on a fish spine, an elder who simply coughed and didn't stop. Medicine here isn't guaranteed. Recovery is a gift. And sickness is a reminder that the body is a fragile temple in a land built for gods. You drift in and out of sleep. You dream of lotus petals, of crocodiles wearing amulets, of Sekhmet chasing away invisible snakes from under your skin. The next day you wake up. Your foot still hurts, but less. You move it. It responds. Not cheerfully, but without venom. Progress. You unwrap the linen. It's stained with everything that once tried to live inside you. You replace it. You whisper thanks to Sekhmet. Or maybe, just to the healer's garlic. Still, you wonder. You wonder what ancient diseases you carry now. What tiny invaders crawl through your blood. What imbalances your soul has triggered. Because health here is not about vitamins or vaccines. It's about harmony. About being aligned with the gods. About not offending the wrong spirit on the wrong day with the wrong offering. You remember a story told in the market once. About a man who coughed during a festival and was believed to be cursed. They shaved his eyebrows, turned his house upside down, and left bread for the spirits of the air. He recovered, or left, or vanished. No one really followed up. You're not that man. Yet, so you do what you can. You eat carefully. You burn incense. You leave a flower at the village shrine. You carry a blue amulet in the shape of an eye. And every now and then you smell garlic and feel safer. Because in ancient Egypt, healing is a conversation between your body, your gods, your herbs, and your silence. You fall asleep again. This time, you dream of being whole, of walking without thought, of dancing even. And when you wake, your foot still aches. But your hope aches a little less. Let's say for a moment that you're not just a person in ancient Egypt. You're a woman in ancient Egypt. And that single fact transforms every grain of sand into a slightly sharper edge. Your morning doesn't start later than anyone else's. In fact, it probably starts earlier. You rise before the sun finishes its dramatic climb into the sky, already aware of the dozens of tasks waiting for you. There's no list, no planner, just the daily loop of labor etched into your body like the lines of your palms. First, you grind grain. Not a few kernels, not a handful, enough to feed a family of 6 who will all complain differently. You kneel over the grindstone, moving the upper slab in circles until your wrists throb and your shoulders hum. The flour it produces will become bread eventually. It will also carry enough stone residue to double as dental exfoliation. Next comes water. You strap a jar to your back or balance it on your head and make your pilgrimage to the Nile. You do it carefully, not gracefully. That's a myth. Carrying a jar of water through crowded sandy streets is a game of balance and prayer. One misstep, one curious goat, and the whole morning spills into the dust. At the riverbank, you navigate past the other women doing the same. You fill your jar, avoiding the murk, and head back before the heat sharpens. You do this every day, twice if needed. Back home, you start the fire, bake the bread, stir the porridge, quiet the baby, wrap the toddler in something vaguely clean, keep the dog away from the goat, chase the chicken out of the pot, answer your mother-in-law, smile at your husband. You cook, you clean, you sew. You patch things that should have been replaced years ago, but fabric is expensive and patience is free. You are not idle. Not ever. And yet your work, though relentless, is often invisible. It doesn't get written into papyrus scrolls. It doesn't become poetry. It doesn't earn your name on a tomb wall. But it does keep everyone else alive. And that's something. You know your gods. You know your offerings. You keep tiny altars in corners, shaped like hope. You speak prayers over steaming pots and mutter blessings while folding tunics. Your religion is lived in motion, not in rituals reserved for the temples, but in the ordinary magic of continuity. You are expected to be strong, modest, patient, clever, fertile, faithful, and clean, all while carrying clay jars, children, and the occasional emotional load of the entire household. You do not complain, or rather you do, but softly, to the walls, to the cat, to the one friend who won't repeat it. Your body is an archive. It remembers every field you've helped till, every basin you've scrubbed, every time you've given birth on a dirt floor with only a handful of women and a few prayers between you and the unknown. Historians note that women in ancient Egypt had more rights than in many later societies, and that's technically true. You can own land. You can inherit. You can initiate divorce. You can run businesses. But you still have to do all of this while also being everything to everyone, every single day. You know your way around plants and poultices. You know that fennel helps with cramps and honey can calm a cough. You know how to pack a wound with mud and hope. You are the healer when the healer is too far. You are the midwife when the real one is late. You also know how to protect your family from things that can't be seen. You wear an amulet against the evil eye. You hang charms near the baby's bed. You tie knots in red thread and tuck them into places only the gods will see. Magic, for you, is not a theory. It is insurance. And then, of course, there is childbirth. You do it without options, without medicine, without mercy. You do it squatting over bricks or kneeling on woven mats, surrounded by women who have done it before and will do it again. You scream or you don't. You bleed, always. You pray that this one lives. You pray that you live. Some do, some don't. There are no guarantees. You bury the ones who don't with tiny amulets and dried flowers, hoping the gods will be kind in the next round. If the child survives, you begin again. Feeding, carrying, teaching, guarding, loving fiercely and quietly and without the luxury of stopping. Sometimes you laugh with other women. You share stories while peeling onions or scrubbing pots. You joke about your husbands. You compare stretch marks. You whisper dreams you barely believe in. You find solidarity in these moments, small, precious, and unrecorded by history. Sometimes you dance, not for ceremony, not for gods, just for yourself, in the kitchen, in the courtyard, under a moon too tired to judge you. You remember that your body is not only for work, it is also for joy. Sometimes you are seen. A scribe notes your skill in weaving. A merchant praises your courage in bargaining. A neighbor thanks you for helping birth her child. These small recognitions are gold to you, not material gold, just the warm, silent kind. Sometimes you are not seen, and that is harder, because invisibility weighs more than water jars. But still, you endure. You endure like the walls of your home, cracked and sun-stained. You endure like the Nile, changing but constant. You endure like the bread, rough but sustaining. Your hair is braided, not for beauty, but to keep it out of your eyes. Your eyes are tired, not from weakness, but from watching over everything that matters. Your hands are calloused, not from clumsiness, but from building a life that no one else will document. You are not a queen, not a goddess, not a high priestess in a linen robe with perfumed skin. You are ordinary, which means you are essential. And when the sun sets, and your house quiets, and your children sleep, you sit in the doorway, just for a minute, and remember who you are, not in song, not in statue, but in silence. And maybe that's enough. Maybe in 1,000 years, someone will dig up your amulet and wonder who you were. Maybe they'll imagine you as a noble, or a mystery, or a line in a textbook. They won't know that you were the one who kept everything going, one grain of flour at a time. You die. Sorry. That came quickly, didn't it? But this is ancient Egypt, and death here is not an end. It's just a formal invitation to start paperwork with the afterlife. Your death isn't dramatic. You don't fall in battle or collapse while building a temple. You don't scream or whisper cryptic prophecies. One day you simply don't wake up. Or maybe your foot infection traveled north. Or maybe the fever that took the neighbor last week found you in your sleep. Either way, your body stops. And your soul, the complicated, multi-part, metaphysical entity that Egyptians are so proud of, begins its journey. Because in ancient Egypt, you are not a single soul. You are many. There's the Ka, your life force, which sticks around the body and still wants snacks. There's the Ba, your personality, which flies around as a bird with your face, visiting your family and judging their home decor. There's your Ren, your name, which must be spoken to keep you remembered. And your Ib, your heart, the real MVP of the whole journey. Your family prepares your body, or tries to. If you're poor, they do what they can. Wrap you in linen, leave some bread and beer, say a few prayers. If you're wealthier, a priest shows up with salt, natron, and a to-do list. The process of mummification begins. It is intimate. Your organs are removed and placed in special jars, each guarded by a deity. Your brain is pulled out through your nose, not because the gods are cruel, but because someone decided it wasn't important. Historians still debate this. The brain, the nose, the entire method. You're stuffed with resin and linen. You're dried, wrapped, blessed, and maybe painted. If you're lucky, someone even adds protective amulets and spells between your layers. Not for style, for spiritual safety. Meanwhile, your Ka is impatient. It wants its tomb ready. It wants food offerings. It wants somewhere to rest. And your Ba is already flying in and out of the house, checking if anyone has made your favorite stew. Your heart, though, is the star. Because the afterlife has a screening process. You arrive, not in heaven, not in fire, but in the hall of two truths where Ma'at, goddess of order, balance, and that fancy feather waits. You are not alone. There's Anubis, jackal-headed guide of the dead. There's Thoth, the ibis-headed scribe, pen in hand, ready to record your fate with divine neatness. And there's a scale. On one side, your heart. On the other, Ma'at's feather. This is the moment you've been prepared for, not just with rituals, but with a lifetime of behavior. Because your heart is not symbolic, it holds every choice, every lie, every petty thought, every time you cursed the overseer or took an extra date from the market stall. You stand there, barefoot and soul naked, and you wait. Anubis places your heart on the scale. It settles gently. Then he places the feather. The scale tips. You don't breathe. You can't. You're already dead. But somehow you feel your Ba holding its breath. If your heart is lighter, if you were good, honest, balanced, you move on to the field of reeds. A paradise where your crops grow without effort, your beer is always cold, and your neighbors never sing off-key. You live forever in a version of Egypt perfected, with no sand in your shoes and no sunburn on your scalp. But if your heart is heavier, enter Amit. She is part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus. She does not judge. She devours. If your heart fails the test, she eats it. You are erased. Not punished, just forgotten. Oblivion. No Ba. No Ka. No anything. Gone. This is the ancient Egyptian fear. Not suffering, but erasure. To not be remembered. To have no name spoken, no tomb visited, no statue kissed by morning light. That's why your name is carved into stone, why you whisper prayers, why you leave offerings, because eternity isn't a reward. It's a maintenance job. Even in death you have responsibilities. Your tomb must be stocked. Bread, beer, onions, little figurines to serve you. Spells from the Book of the Dead, which, by the way, is not one book, but a DIY guide written on papyrus and placed in your wrappings, full of handy phrases like, "Don't eat my soul, crocodile god." And yes, I was innocent. No, really. You hope your family paid for the good version. If you're poor, your tomb is small. Maybe just a pit. But someone still places a bowl, a piece of bread, a word, and that might be enough. Because the dead in Egypt are never far away. They whisper in dreams. They visit through birds. They appear in the corner of your eye when the incense flickers. They are present. They are persistent. You, newly deceased, now begin your eternal schedule. You greet old ancestors. You tend your crops in the field of reeds. You receive offerings when your descendants remember you. You haunt quietly when they don't. You are remembered. For a while. Then, slowly, inevitably, your name fades. The stone cracks. The paint chips. The prayers stop. The food ceases, and your ka begins to hunger. Eventually, you sleep. Not in pain. Not in fear. Just in silence, and centuries pass. A windstorm reveals your tomb. Foreigners arrive. They examine your bones, your jars, your wrapped body. They marvel. They catalog. They write books. They forget your name. But someone reads your story. A fragment. A glyph. A guess. And for a brief moment, your bee stirs. Someone, somewhere wonders who you were. And maybe, just maybe, that is enough to keep the scales balanced. Even now. Even still, you think it's over. You've been mummified, judged, buried, prayed for, forgotten. What more could possibly happen to you? Plenty. Because in ancient Egypt, death is only the beginning, and eternity is just long enough for someone to eventually dig you up. At first, you rest peacefully. Your tomb, modest or magnificent, sits undisturbed under layers of time and dust. Your offerings dry out. Your amulets shift. Your name, carved in stone or scratched into pottery, fades under the weight of centuries. And then one day, there's a noise. Not thunder, not divine judgment, not Anubis checking in. It's a chisel, a pickaxe, a pair of hands, rough, human, alive. A lamp flickers in the dark. Shadows stretch across the walls of your tomb. You stir, metaphorically, and remember, you are no longer alone. Tomb robbers. They arrive without reverence. They do not pray. They do not whisper your name. They don't care about your ba or your heart or how perfectly your limbs were wrapped. They're here for gold, for jewelry, for that one little statuette of a servant you hoped would keep you company in the afterlife. They take everything. Your necklaces, your coins, your funerary mask. Sometimes even your teeth if they think they're ivory. They throw your bones aside. They break your pottery. They unwrap you like a dusty, sacred gift. Historians still debate whether tomb robbery was driven purely by greed or desperation. You suspect it's both. People are hungry, the kingdom is unstable, or maybe someone just decided you looked a little too comfortable down here. They leave your tomb in ruin. They light a torch with scraps of your linen. They call it a good night's work. And you, or what remains of you, lie there, desecrated and confused. Not because you were robbed, but because the rituals were broken. The order was shattered. The eternal contract violated. You wait. More centuries pass. Then, one day, a different group arrives. They speak a strange language. They carry notebooks and measuring tools. They whisper, they sketch, they wear hats. They do not steal exactly, and they study. They are archaeologists, and you are a discovery. You are dusted gently, measured, catalogued, debated, photographed. They speak of you with wonder, awe, occasional mispronunciations. You are not angry. They didn't mean to disturb you. They're just curious. You're placed in a wooden crate. You travel. By boat, by train, by truck. Eventually, you arrive in a building filled with marble and glass and carefully labeled rooms. You are displayed, behind glass, under light, with a plaque. It says, your name, or what they think it was. It mentions the dynasty, or close to it. It talks about your jewelry, your linen, your burial position, your age, your possible cause of death. It does not mention your dreams, or the jokes you told your sister, or the moment you first held your son. You are called an artifact, a teaching tool, a link to the past. Children press their noses to the glass, tourists take photos, scholars make notes. You become famous for a moment. And then, routine. You are another mummy in another case. People pass you by, some read your plaque, some don't, and yet you remain. Your body, once sacred, now serves science, history, curiosity. Some say this is beautiful, that you live on through learning. Others say it's a violation, that your rest was stolen, your peace disturbed, your ba isn't sure. Some nights it hovers near the ceiling, watching the janitor sweep. Other times it drifts out to the street, listening to the sounds of a world so different it hurts, and yet you are still remembered. You are studied. Your name is spoken, and maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Meanwhile, back in Egypt, other tombs lie hidden, untouched, waiting. Not all will be found. Not all will be robbed. Some will collapse. Some will vanish. Some will endure. And those who rest inside, they dream of fields, of rivers, of balance, of order. Because for all its sun and sand, ancient Egypt is a world of structure, rituals, cycles, a rhythm older than pyramids. The sun rises, the Nile floods, the grain grows, the people pray, and even if the tombs crumble, the story continues, retold, reimagined, revived. You were part of it, not a pharaoh, not a general, not a god, just a person, which, in this land, was already divine. And now, we exhale. You've walked through fire-baked mornings, bathed in crocodile rivers, dined on sand-seasoned bread, worked beneath gods who never blinked, and whispered prayers to keep the invisible at bay. You've carried jars, stories, burdens. You've knelt in fields, swayed to chants, dared to sleep in tombs that still echo. And somehow, you're still here, still whole, even when wrapped in linen and forgotten beneath centuries of stone and silence. Ancient Egypt was never just pyramids or golden masks. It was skin. It was dust. It was rhythm and ritual. 1,000 tiny acts repeated each day to keep chaos outside the door. Even if that door creaked, even if the sand got in. Tonight, you are not a tourist in time. You are the farmer, the builder, the child, the mother, the soul drifting quietly through the hall of two truths. And as the stars settle in their ancient constellations above your modern ceiling, you may begin to feel it. That same softness the Egyptians prayed for. Balance. A lightness in the chest, a quiet in the mind, a weightless heart. Perhaps you'll carry a tiny amulet into sleep tonight, or maybe just a single grain of sand, tucked somewhere between your thoughts and the pillows. Let it remind you. Even in a world ruled by sun gods and sacred chickens, rest was still a kind of offering. So now close your eyes. Let the desert wind cool your thoughts. Let the Nile of your breath flow steady and slow. You've earned your sleep. You've earned your peace. And if the gods are listening, maybe they'll smile. Just for a moment. Sweet dreams.